Alright everyone, welcome back to Talkin' Soccer. I am your host, Justin Horniker, and let's dive into today's topic. I want to talk a little bit about NWSL Free Agency and why it's gone a little bit awry so far. The NWSL Players Association has put forth an injunction for the free agency period that's supposed to start pretty soon because of some disagreements, I guess is a good word for it, beyond who is actually eligible for this free agency period. Let's start off by explaining what NWSL Free Agency is. If you're familiar with free agency and other sports, you might be wondering what's going on here. And basically, NWSL hasn't had a free agency mechanism for inter-league transactions. Yes, players who didn't have an NWSL contract, who weren't a U.S. player at some point that was discovered by another team, had rights to come in and sign with whoever. Claire Lavage, for instance, signs with KC. They don't have to trade with somebody else to acquire their rights. However, for a US-born player, a US national team player, a player on the discovery list, it's a little bit more difficult. Usually the rights are carried by another team. What free agency does is players with over 6 years of service are eligible to sign with whoever they want, and that team that signs them doesn't have to negotiate their rights. This is important, one, because it makes it easier for players to go where they want to go. It also makes it easier for players to negotiate with multiple teams that get the contract that they want. Some bodily autonomy. You're not just stuck in whoever just happens to own your rights, which has been a big issue for NWSL in the past. Now that it's a 12-team league, there are more places for players to go. There are more locations that they might not want to be. NWSL is a wide league with different cities, with different cultures, with different ownership groups that, frankly, you should be allowed to determine where you want to play. So why is there such an issue with free agency right now? And that's because a little bit of a simple fact that the NWSL Players Association thinks that any player with over 6 years of service with an expiring contract should be able to sign with whatever team they want and be subjected to the new free agency rules. NWSL is arguing that players who have an option coming up will have to either decline or accept that option, and only then will they be allowed, if they decline the option, to enter free agency. That's going to significantly cut down on the time that they can spend out of contract. So players who are coming up out of contract now can be free to negotiate with whoever they want, that they can sign a deal when that contract expires. However, if they have a upcoming extension, even if they plan on turning down that option to extend their contract, they have to wait. In the current setup with how NWSL wants it, with how the league wants it, they would have to wait for that extension, for that clause to run out before they could start negotiating with their team. NWSL thinks that, or the Players Association think that that shouldn't be the case. And thus, we have the injunction we have now on the eve of free agency. So that's kind of where we're at. Let me know what you think about that down in the comments. But I wanted to read a little bit about the why. And it's really important because one of the players who was on this asterisk list of a player who can't go out and sign with who they want to is Christine Sinclair. Christine Sinclair is one of the foundational players of NWSL, Canadian national team captain, and a large part of the NWSL PA. So here's what she had to say. As a player who has played in NWSL for 10 years, free agency is a massive step forward in the league and the players. Free agency is the standard for every other soccer league around the world, and it will help attract top talent. The NWSL should embrace that. Lou Barnes echoed, free agency would give my generation of players a freedom that we've never had, the ability to self-determine our future and advocate for our true value, being able to choose the club environment that suits us best, whether that is choosing a loyalty when earned or new challenges when needed, will increase career longevity and ultimately benefit the league. It is imperative that the league does right by those who have given so much towards it. That's important, right? These players that are currently being in this injunction are there because they have been in the league for over 10 years and just that's the way their contract is structured. And it's important that these players are taken care of. Without them, the league would not be in the position they are to where free agency is possible and viable. In the past, free agency wasn't a thing because the league wasn't on steady financial footing. It's like what we talk about when we talk about MLS as well. These rules that seem antiquated, that seem weird because no other league in the world does things this way, is because soccer in the American market is so strange. It's a large country. There aren't a lot of viable teams, at least until really recently in history, especially when you compare back to leagues in Europe going back hundreds of years, not hundreds, but over 100 years into the early 1900s and the 1800s of some teams. You don't have that level of viability here in the US, even though soccer in the US dates back to that time span. Leagues have come and gone so much. So that's why rules in this country are often very confusing, especially when the sports landscape in the US is so much different than anywhere else in the world anyway. Collective bargaining is a thing in all of our leagues. There is an aspect of socialism in American sports that isn't in Europe, which is very funny when you think about it. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope this quick little explainer video helps you understand what NWSL Free Agency is, why the NWSLPA has filed an injunction, and give you a little bit of knowledge when you talk about it with your family after they inevitably ask you. As always, if you like this video, make sure you give me a subscribe, thumbs up, and we'll talk soon, everyone.